The life and work of Anna Freud. Anna, born on December 3rd, 1895, to Martha and Sigmund, she would be the sixth and final child in the family. For most of her young childhood, she would describe herself as unhappy, as she struggled not only with relationships between herself and her siblings, but a relationship with herself. She considered herself ugly as she grew into a teen. This would not be her greatest childhood struggle, however. She was increasingly troubled with her thoughts, fantasies, and feelings. This internal struggle caused Anna to suffer from severe depression and become extremely thin due to eating disorders. As she progressed to school age, Anna would become mischievous and troubled. She was then sent to a secondary school for girls. She learned quickly and she did well there. Upon completion of her teachings in 1912, she decided to become a teacher herself. Anna would become most known for her work in a field where she began as a patient at the hand of her father Sigmund. In her youth, as she struggled with her behavior and mental issues, she would learn the process of psychoanalysis as her father worked to help her through her struggles. She had always considered herself intelligent, and as such, she began her first job as a school teacher at her former school in 1914. She would teach children school aged from 2nd to 5th grade for 3 years, from 1915 until 1918, during which time she was extremely successful. Sadly, in 1918, Anna contracted tuberculosis and became very sick. It seemed that she struggled long after her recovery from the illness and made the difficult decision to leave teaching due to her overall health and state of depression becoming very serious in 1920. Anna was always writing her father, and being very close to him, he invited her back home to study alongside him after she had stepped away from teaching. At this moment, she notes that her real education began. Her life was quite simple as she began work. Anna began her work in life as a teacher, which she thoroughly enjoyed, but little did she know that this would roll over, and her love for sharing education with others would follow her through her life's work and her work with her father. Her love of teaching gave her ample opportunity to teach a magnitude of people at different levels of study in different locations all over the globe. When Anna struggled in 1920 with her health, she made a decision that would not only change her life, but forever change the course of psychoanalysis and child developmental studies. Accepting that a proposal to work alongside Sigmund, Anna would make great contributions to child psychology and psychoanalysis without ever obtaining a medical degree. Anna's first paper, titled Beating Fantasies and Daydreams, would be published in 1922, explaining her studies on daydreaming and sexual desires. It would only be a short time after publishing this paper that Anna would have a psychoanalysis practice of her own, studying and helping children. At the same time, she would become an instructor at the Vienna Psychoanalysis Training Institute. During this time of study in 1923, Anna's whole world would once again come crashing down as Sigmund would be diagnosed with cancer, and Anna would become his primary caregiver. Anna grew very busy, attempting to juggle all aspects of her life for the next decade. Anna continued to work with her father as he could, all while running her practice and becoming secretary of the International Psychoanalytic Association and continuing to lecture and educate large groups on her own studies of psychoanalysis. In 1934, Anna wrote a book directed towards teachers entitled Introduction to Techniques of Child Analysis. The book was full of Anna's earlier work that she had presented in lectures on children and their development. After all of Anna's hard work and practice in publishing her first book, she was asked to London for a large seminar based on her recently published literature. After all of her triumphs and struggles in her work and personal life, in 1935, Anna would become the director of the Vienna Psychoanalysis Training Institute, leading her to furthering her thoughts and studies on ego and defense while publishing The Ego and Mechanisms of Defense in 1937. This publication would be vital in research pertaining to the ego psychology as time progressed and continues to provide a standard for research today. While supervising her nursery, she worked tirelessly alongside Dorothy Birmingham to observe child behavior, specifically on feeding patterns. This abruptly ended in 1938 when the nursery was forced to close with the arrival of Nazis in Austria and Germany. All of her work with her father and her children would be put on pause as the Nazis were invading. Anna and her family, being of Jewish descent, would be forced in 1938 to flee from their home to England for safety from the Nazis. It would be the duty of Anna to ensure safe passage for her family as her father was very sick. Sigmund was sick with throat and jaw cancer. It would be Anna who continued to be his primary caregiver through his final years. By 1939, they had safely got relocated, with Anna establishing a new psychoanalytical practice in London, England. After she got her practice established, she would lose her main teacher for most of her work in psychoanalysis and her research partner, her father Sigmund, due to his progressing cancer in September of 1939. In 1941, alongside her friend and colleague Dorothy, they established a new nursery called the Hampstead War Nurseries, located in London, to provide a safe place for children during war. With this new venture, they were once again able to continue their research. Their gathered information and observations would be published in several separate publications, including Young Children in Wartime, published in 1942, War and Children in 1943, and Infants Without Families in 1944. Anna branched out and grew with her research topics and ideas. So did her accomplishments grow with her. Anna would next, alongside Kate Friedlander, established another clinic called the Hampstead Child Therapy Courses. Although not close with her mother, she would lose her mother Martha at age 90 in November of 1951. She continued her research and completed a variety of smaller publications and books that would detail a child's development from infancy to adolescence. The publications were written based on Anna's own viewpoints and records of all of the children's clinics and other analyses she had participated in. One of her main books, written in 1965, was Normality and Pathology in Childhood. In her final years, while Anna continued her research, she devoted a great portion of her time to traveling to the United States and researching at Yale Law School to affect how ideas of family can impact crime. It would be during her time here at Yale that she would produce 2 more publications, Before the Best Interests of the Child in 1973 and Beyond the Best Interests of the Child in 1973. These publications had a main goal in her research of forming a universal approach for states to intervene and decide the best placement for a child in custody cases. The basis of this approach was completely in the best interest of the child and the parent who would best care for their needs, both emotionally and physically. Though Anna never received a master's degree, she was honored to receive several honorary doctorate degrees from several universities, including Clark University in 1950, Harvard University in 1980, and Vienna University. In 1973, Anna would become the honorary president of the International Psychoanalytic Association, which she would remain until her death in 1982. Anna will forever be remembered for her life's work. Hampstead Clinic was renamed in her honor to the Anna Freud Center, and her home in London, which was the Freud family home until their escape from the Nazis, became the Freud Museum. All throughout her life, Anna was humbled in the efforts she put forth, including the dedication of awards she received in the process, always dedicating them to the field of psychoanalysis rather than her own time and efforts. Noteworthy in her outside life, Anna opened doors for women of her time by occupying professional positions that were typically reserved for men. Anna's work in her life was bound into a collection that began in 1968 with the final of 8 volumes appearing in 1983 after her death. Her father, Sigmund, would always be her lifetime mentor. Sigmund would help work with Anna through her own inner struggles while she was young growing and through help teaching her psychoanalysis. Anna would use these teachings and continue their work long after her father's passing, publishing much of those works. Anna traveled teaching and lecturing even after the loss of her father. Her truest passion would shine through in her work with children, which would be the focus of her life. Anna would never marry, and she would pass the age 86 in London, England in 1982. Anna ended her own life with an overdose of sleeping pills. She was found and taken to the hospital, but died 3 days later on the 9th of October in 1982. The work that Anna tirelessly devoted in her life was bringing great expansion to not only her, but to the world of psychoanalysis. It is impossible to count the ways that Anna's work has been expanded upon, as researchers are continuously undergoing studies in the fields that she first started. One of the most impactful messages that Anna published for others to understand in her studies was that no 2 children were ever the same, and each child should be recognized as their own person in their own right. This was so impactful that it has led to the development of different treatment options for children, as it was recognized that a one-size-fits-all approach will never be effective. We owe Anna so much in the world of child psychology and psychoanalysis.